Shobha. Namaskar and a very warm welcome to this conglomerate of eminent overseas and Indian speakers and delegates who have come to deliberate at the FICCI Higher Education Summit 2015. On behalf of FICCI and all present in the hall, I warmly welcome the dignitaries on the dais. We are honored to have with us Honorable Vice Chairman Niti Aayog, Dr. Arvind Panagria, as well as Secretary Higher Education, Mr. Vinay Oberoi. I also welcome my colleagues from FICCI, Mr. Mohandas Pai, Rajan Saxena, and Dr. Indira Parekh. The correlation of higher education to economic development of a country and region is self-evident. While India will have to ensure inclusive growth across all states, it is equally important to ensure prosperity and stability in the region. Home to 50% of the world poor, with 456 million living on less than $2 per day, Asia has a vested interest in promoting the regional development agenda. Prime Minister Modi's Act East policy clearly articulates India's intent in this direction. Higher education and research will play a significant role in the regional trade and policy integration, provided there is a change in approach, which of course some of the Asian countries like Korea, Singapore, Japan, Malaysia, and China have done. However, countries like India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan continue to grapple with over-regulation of the sector, leading to the mushrooming of poor quality public and private institutions. There's also a huge graduate unemployment. It is therefore imperative for Asia to build a new narrative for higher education, leverage the private sector participation, and enhance the student-faculty cross-mobility. The 21st century intelligent technologies are disrupting the process of learning, and this is going to accelerate with time. Preparing the workforce for the 21st century society will require rethinking the traditional education model and adopt a cutting-edge teaching practice to prepare our young to live in a complex, multidimensional, and global society. Governments need to recognize this and bring in adequate reforms in regulation for faster adoption by the universities. In this context, FICCI had articulated Higher Education in India Vision 2030, which was released in 2013. I am happy to share that several of our suggestions have been adopted by the government. India by 2020 will be home to 1.35 billion people, of whom 906 million will be of working age. The real action for development herein lies at the states, as it accounts for 99% of total higher education institutions, 97% of enrollments, and 67% of overall public spend. This year's FICCI E&Y Report 2015 is aimed at expanding the Vision 2030 for higher education to the states. This is timely, as most of the states are working towards developing a strategy and implementation framework under the Rashtriya Uchchatar Shiksha Abhiyan. The 2 days of the conference will see experts from across the globe share their views and debate on issues and come up with recommendations that we will be presenting to the government. The timely implementation of these recommendations in true spirit would help in the realization of the aspirations of 1.27 billion population. I request the distinguished delegates to support FICCI's commitment to realize the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan by signing up on the board outside and show solidarity with the government's noble initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank each one of you for participating in this significant summit. Namaskar.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your valuable views and setting the context for the conference. We do realize that you are not well, and the fact that you made time and thought this was an important event to come and grace the occasion, we thank you very much. Please give a big round of applause and thanks. May I now invite Mr. Mohandas Pai, Chairman, FICCI Higher Education Committee, to give the theme address.
Dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, 2 years ago, FICCI Higher Education Committee came out with a vision report. We sat back and thought to ourselves, what kind of a country do you want to see in 2030 in terms of higher education? We said, let us drop all constraints in our minds and think anew. So we came out with a vision report, and the vision report said, in numbers, we must have a GER of around 50% across India by 2030. We must have 20 of our universities at least in the top 200 in the world. We must have justice and equity in our higher education system so that the poorest of the poor get access to higher education, and we must remove disparity between our various states. And we came out with this aspiration and looked at where we were 2 years ago and suggested a series of measures to reach our target. Very often when we think about the future, we are constrained by the past. We always think of challenges. And we said we should not think of challenges, but dream of the India that we want. Because we are a civilization which is always respected knowledge and scholars. Because we understood, possibly, in an intuitive way, there is only knowledge that makes civilizations sustainable and long-lasting. Today, we have built up a very enviable higher education infrastructure. We have more than 800 universities, both public, private, deemed, and of all sorts. We have 48,000 colleges. We follow the affiliation system. And it's only in the subcontinent that the affiliation system is followed, by the way. And we have about 32 million young children in colleges. 32 million. That's a large number, the second largest in the world. We are a $2.25 trillion economy, depending upon how the dollar-rupee conversion rate is. And by 2030, we could be between 8 to 10 trillion. Dr. Panagriat assures us we'll grow more than 8%, and I do believe him, so that we could be this great economy. We're the third largest economy in PPP terms at $7.6 trillion. We are possibly the seventh largest economy in nominal terms too. And if you look at our average age, we are 27 years in average for all our citizens. We are one of the youngest population in the world. Our population is stabilizing now, growing at 1.3% a year. So we have much to go for us. But to go and make the leap forward and possibly avoid the middle income trap of getting stuck at a particular point in terms of per capita income, we need to invest in a higher education system today. And the reasons are very clear. The world in the future will be driven by innovation, by technology and research. The world will be driven by knowledge, and the world will be driven by the service sector with a strong underlying manufacturing base. And innovation cycles have come down, and innovation cycles imply that young people have to be highly skilled and educated to do well for themselves. Automation is killing many jobs at a pace faster than ever. In the last 10 years, 10 million jobs have been lost in the United States because of automation. In India, we lost 1 million jobs because of automation. People need to understand that jobs will go away, the kind of middle class good jobs will go away. In the last 15 years, in the United States, the middle class has not seen an increase in the income. But the future is going to be very, very different from the past. I'm sure you heard it before, and you're going to hear it every single year, because everybody says the future is going to be very, very different. So we need to change and reform our higher education system to make sure our children get the best the world has to offer. If we believe as a society that we want to create conditions for our young people to do well in the world and to live well, and to believe that we must leave a better world for our children than the world that our parents gave us, we have to invest in higher education and open up higher education. And the most important reform for Indian higher education is autonomy. We have to give full autonomy to universities, administrative autonomy, academic autonomy, and financial autonomy. They do have a little bit of academic autonomy. They should get more. In terms of administrative autonomy, they should be driven by their own boards and have their own vision rather than regulators. And in terms of financial autonomy, we need public funding to be given to students and not institutions. Because if you give money to institutions, they don't become accountable. But if you give money to students and students are empowered to go choose an institution, you'll find a different kind of institution. All of us send our children to the best schools, the best colleges, because we can afford to do it. But a poor person will not be able to send his child or her child to a very good institution of their choice because they lack the ability to pay fees. So empowerment is the ability of an individual to have a personal choice and personal freedom and to exercise it, which only comes if they have financial power. So giving scholarships to young students rather than funding institutions for admission is something that we need to do as a reform in terms of autonomy. Autonomy also means that the universities don't have to be together. We need diversity. We don't need the same regulations for a country of our size, 1.27 billion people. All universities in all parts of the world are very different. Each university sets out its own course, its own future, driven by its own vision of what they want to be. And we should prevent this move towards coming together as one single standard for this whole country, because it is not feasible and is not acceptable to most people who believe in the freedom of thought. So I think it's very important that each university decides its own future, driven by its own vision, in any manner that they think they need to do. We need research. Most of our universities are teaching universities. We don't do enough research because there's no public funding. And we know this story. Public funding is inadequate, and if you look at global rankings, the rankings are based upon research and not on teaching. We are teaching universities. Maybe it was evident necessary because we were in a particular stage of a development and we didn't have enough money, but we need to increase public funding. So we suggest that we create a national science, technology and humanities research foundation, which could get maybe 5,000 crores, which is not very much for a country of this size. And universities could compete for research grants, because competition is what makes up good quality research and enhances quality. And we have to make sure our students get the best global education, and that's a challenge in this country. And that means that we allow the foreign universities to come into this country in a free manner. Today, 300,000 Indians study overseas, spending $10 billion a year. 130,000 in the United States, maybe 45,000 in the UK. Germany is 12,000. We went to Germany, we are surprised to see 12,000 students. France has got some 10,000, Netherlands has got some 5,000 or 6,000, and we told them that we want to send 100,000 Indian students by 2025 to France, 100,000 to Germany, and maybe 50,000 to the Netherlands. They were a bit shocked when we spoke to them, but then we are a large country. So why can't we invite universities in the top 500 in the world by any rating mechanism to come and set up universities in this country in special economic zones, because we have a regulatory mechanism. They could give their own degree, get their own faculty, and very much do what they like to do without any constraint from our regulatory authorities. And the logic is very clear. Our students go out, 300,000 of them, maybe in 10 years' time there will be 500,000. They want to get educated. We want to invest in our children, and we want our children to have the best, and we can't constrain them. And let me say this. The well-to-do in this country send their children out for higher education. Go to the US universities for masters. The well-to-do of this country send them. The elite of this country send them. The only people who can't go are the middle class and maybe the poor. And we should not discriminate based upon purchasing power. So we need to do that. The next, we need technology. Like the internet transformed America, we need to have technology and open up the system for technology. I envisage a time 10 years from now when there will be a global virtual university which is going to allow various universities in the world to open system to the MOOCs to do certificate courses driven by the best professors that the world has. And this university will create a collection of credits to be given, and based on the credits give a degree. And if I have a degree with a course in Yale, with a course in IIT Delhi, with a course in Oxford, with a course in University of Tokyo, maybe university in Korea, and collect all that, and if you get a certain amount of credits, I could get a degree. And the world will respect the degree, because the world wants diversity. So we need to embrace technology, open up MOOCs, have online education freely. Today we have restrictions that online education in the state cannot be done by the state. We restrict the choice of students. We need to open up and do very well. Having said this, the most important lesson that we learned in the last 2 years working on the vision document is that India is a collection of 29 different countries. And each state is very different. Each state is as big as the country in Europe. Tamil Nadu is as big as Germany. Karnataka is as big as the UK. UK is not in Europe, we know that. and maybe Maharashtra is bigger than France. When those countries work in a very different manner, even though they are under the European Commission, EU, European Union mechanism, our states are working very differently. So we said, like Shobha has already explained, we came out with a state report and a state vision report, and we found some amazing data and amazing divergence. Tamil Nadu has got 42% gross enrollment rate. They're truly outstanding. They have been having 69% reservation for the last so many years, maybe the only state to have it in the 9th schedule. And because of that education, because of the fact that there is social equity, because of the fact that large numbers are going through, Tamil Nadu clearly stands out in human development indices all the time. The birth rate has come down, life expectancy has gone up, there are enough jobs, it's becoming a manufacturing hub. Whereas if you look at Eastern India, they're way behind. And if you look at the whole of India, South India, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, and then we have those Andhra and Telangana, their gross enrollment rate on an average is about 30-32%. The birth rate is down, the fertility rate is now 1.8%. I think they've grown about 9 to 10% a year for the last 10 years. And next 10 years they're going to grow because they've got rich human capital. So development, higher education, there's a correlation. Development in terms of population, the correlation. Can we establish the correlation? I don't know. We need research under Dr. Panagia to find that. But from a glance, it is very, very evident that higher education has a great role to play, especially the education of women. In all the southern states, maybe the ratio in the genders is about 49 women and 51 men, and that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So it shows that the kind of society that you want to build in India is only evident in the southern part of India, and this diversity is very wide. So we reckon that each state in India, which is very large, should have its own vision report, take a series of steps. So we created an index called the FICCI Index, by which states can judge themselves, compete amongst everybody, and then do that. And there could be divergence in terms of an educational experience while creating a single system where there's mobility for all students. And I think that's very important. We need more investment, of course. Today we invest 1.16% of GDP in the public sector in the states. But I would state boldly, maybe you invest 3% of GDP on higher education privately. Because this public investment doesn't count private investment. Because 62% of our young children, of young students, are in private colleges where they pay the fees. And the fees are pretty well because they are at market rates. And if 62% pay the fees and the balance is 1.1%, obviously the rest is about 3%. So maybe 3%. We are spending already 4.1, 4.2% of GDP on higher education, and there's an enormous amount of money that is going into higher education, which will only increase. The cost of higher education has also gone up, and we need to look at that. The regulatory burden has to be reduced so the cost could come down. And around the world today, there's a big challenge that cost of education is driving students away from universities and creating large debt for the students. We have to create a system in India where our young people, when they go to the workforce, don't carry the high burden of debt, because most of us are educated at public cost and we've done well and we're taxpayers. So we can't ask a future generation to be burdened by student loan to a large extent because we as a society are not able to fund their education while we got away at a different point of time. So social equity demands that public education, especially universities, funded largely to public money, to taxpayers' money, maybe a different surcharge, but we have to look at that. I want to conclude by saying that we are on the cusp of great change in India and around the globe. The world will be a very different place in 5 to 10 years. India will be a very different place, and the diversity within an Indian state is going to become that much greater, and we have to make sure that we as a country invest in human capital, invest in people, because we live for our future generations. We live for people. Every democracy lives for its own citizens. We have to invest in them, stop deprivation by making sure every child is educated, every child's aspiration for higher education is met, and create the kind of India that we need. And for that, we have to reform, we have to open up, we have to have competitive federalism, and we have to make sure that dreams are realized. Thank you for coming here, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pai, for that very dynamic and inspiring speech. I think it has already set the building blocks for the 2-day deliberations that are going to take place. Here I would take a moment to thank the leadership of our committee, starting with our chair, Mr. Mohandas Pai, co-chairs, Dr. Rajan Saxena and Dr. Indra Parekh, and support of our committee members, Mr. Anand Sudarshan, Director, Sylvant Advisors, Dr. Kavita Sharma, President, South Asian University, Dr. Furkan Kamar, Secretary General Association of Indian Universities, and Dr. Pankaj Jalote, Director, IIIT Delhi, who helped us in shaping the conference agenda. We would also like to acknowledge our knowledge partners, British Council, Ernst & Young, and EFMD, who not only gave us content but also gave us the linkages with their networks. FICCI is indeed very privileged to have this knowledge powerhouse with us who drive our higher education agenda. With this, may I now request Mr. Vinayshil Oberoi, Secretary Higher Education, MHRD, Government of India, to deliver the keynote address. Sir, we are indeed privileged to have you with us.
Thank you, Shona. Dr. Jyotsna Suri, Dr. Panagare, Mohandas Pai, who has both eloquently and passionately put his views forward, Rajan Saxena, Indra Parekh, Dr. Gilar Singh, who I don't see, but I'm sure is here in spirit. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for inviting me to a conference which will explore a range of issues in what I believe is actually the most critical sector in our country today. When I look at the education sector in the past, the higher education sector in the last year and a half, one of the key words is expansion. And you're seeing a system that is expanding. It is expanding at an unprecedented rate, not just in the central institutions, but across in the states, in the private segment. Today we have 18 IITs, next year we'll have 23. There are 19 IIMs, 46 central universities. This is the core of, let me say, the central government-led institutional setup. It includes the NITs, the IISers, the IIITs, the Indian Institute of Science, but at the end of the day, this is less than 2.7% of the student population of the country. So there is a large part of India in the state sector with the private universities, with initiatives that in some ways I would not have thought possible 5 or 10 years ago. So it's not just expansion. There is a change. There are many changes taking place in higher education. And let me sort of try and come and cover some of them. Access is so important in a country of 1.3 billion people. We need to provide for that for our students. I'm not a great fan of the gross enrollment ratio because I think it's an imperfect indicator. It has limitations, and it's certainly not an indicator that can capture all of what the higher education sector should be. But it is an indicator, and today we are at about 22%, a little over 22%. I see this rising as it must. And to do that, there will need to be capacity expansion across the different segments of the sector. To an extent, as Mohandas pointed out, government can provide for it and should provide for it. But when you look at that, and the 6% of GDP, I think is an important number, it is not just public investment, it's across the board that will fund this. I heard and I hear a lot about our institutions and the fact that they do enter global rankings, if at all, marginally. The recent QS, I think in the first 200 or 300, there are 5 Indian institutions in that. I'm very proud of the fact that in the last 45 days, an indigenous ranking framework, let me call it the National Institutional Ranking Framework, has emerged. There's been an extraordinary amount of work that has been done by the teams that prepared this. The engineering institutions first, the universities, and rapidly being followed by the management institutions, by architecture, by others. And I think I can reasonably assure you that on the first Monday of April, you will have institutions, higher education institutions, ranked through a framework which, in a sense, is more representative, more akin to our requirements. QS, the Times, there's a very strong premium on perception, and I think these ranking frameworks have tried to follow a slightly moderated version of that. Secondly, it is self-reporting. It is self-indicated. So I presume that there would be some kind of penalty for misreporting. But at the end of the day, it's driven by the institutions. The central educational institutions will necessarily be a part of it, and we are encouraging the state institutions to do so as well. For the others, I believe that, and it will work, that they will come onto it. Because if you want to be ranked, maybe we won't reach 48,000 or the 47,200 colleges in the first 2 years. Maybe you never will. Maybe you will not reach every one of those 800, which is actually 743 universities. But if you aspire to be a good institution, then I think you will want to be on this ranking framework. So I have a certain degree of optimism on that, and I hope that we'll be able to fulfill this and reasonably confident on that. We do have the indigenous platform, MOOCs was talked about. The SWAYAM platform is indigenous. As I look ahead, to provide access to quality education, brick and mortar institutions will have their place. But you will see over the next few years, the SWAYAM and MOOCs combination, the platform and the content emerge. And this will emerge to provide to our students and to our faculties the opportunities that they may not have otherwise had. Over the last, but certainly last week, we had possibly we had about 900 courses, high quality courses ready. They will wait for the platform to emerge, maybe in March, maybe in April next year, but certainly before the academic season. So I agree with you, Mohandas, that this is an area that we in India, the largest higher education system in the world, or one of the largest definitely, certainly one of the 5 largest, will have to go. That's the direction in which we will have to go. Our institutions, in some ways, research is an area that definitely is not up to, let me say, the standards of much of the rest of the world, especially the developed world. We do need to get there. In the IIMs, we have to bring research. These cannot only be teaching institutions, and research will have to be undertaken. I see the IIMs expanding beyond the financial sector, the services sector, beyond financial services and the banks, to the management of change in agriculture, in the rural sector, governance itself, education. I find that I'm not able to easily locate courses in the management institutions on education, on the management of education, on the administration of education. It's certainly an area that I think these institutions could move towards, and we're encouraging them to do so. The IITs and the NITs and their associated sister institutions in the technology area, the ICERs, the IIITs, we will have to raise the research. The government is seriously considering, and we are close to it, of providing corpuses, more importantly providing frameworks in which they can collaborate. You will see some of these emerge in the next few months. But you cannot be, and I speak of the central universities, you cannot only be teaching universities, or you should not only be teaching universities. Research is integral. There's a synergy between research and teaching that we must fulfill. RUSA was spoken of. When I speak of the central educational sector, less than 3%, you need to build capacities, to build quality, to build access in the state sector. So RUSA is actually one of the most important programs, and it is in fact now the only significant program of the ministry which deals with the states, so it's in a sense being brought together. Working with the states, and I have spent a lot of time in the last 2 or 3 months talking to the state governments. You know, India is a land which is hungry for education. You know, it's aspirational. It's the pathway to mobility, to social advancement, to economic mobility. And we owe it. And we do need to work with the states. I think the government of India is conscious of that. And that's one of the key areas. You spoke of scholarships. I'm not sure you want to go to the US model where, give or take 1% or 2%, but across the major sectors, 87% of higher education is funded through some kind of debt. That carries its own issues, but certainly in India, where the figure is less than 2%, that needs to go up. I wonder if you've noticed, but there is a national scholarship portal and a national loan portal which has emerged over the past month or 2. We've been watching the figures as they come on. The loan portal is a single window. The banks, the Indian Banks Association, they have worked to bring a portal which is a single window portal. There is, and maybe there shouldn't be, uniformity in the terms and conditions and tenure of loans, but you can at least go to the portal, you will get the information, and then you can go and exercise the choice across banks, across locations. I think it's an important step. We're trying to integrate the scholarship portal, eliminate duplication, provide for direct benefits transfer, and to make sure that these work in tandem so that the financing of higher education for students, which is in a sense the key, that is both transparent and available and easily accessible. We're looking at the National Digital Library, which coordinated by IIT Kharagpur, which is doing the sort of key work on this. I'm confident that by the end of December, we will have 2 million books, journals, periodicals, right down to PhD theses available on this. Available free, available to all Indian citizens. I think we're getting there, integrating the system, providing access to educational institutions, to students. All of these are steps being taken to not only provide access, but provide quality and opportunity. So these are some of the areas that I thought would be important. The issue of autonomy, Mohandas also spoke of that. It's very important. Of course, institutions should be autonomous. Firstly, they should be academically autonomous, and I think that is being respected, that is being observed. Secondly, they should be autonomous to, let me say, determine not only the content, the academic content, but the directions in which they want to go, and the partnerships and collaborations that they want to tie. You also need to think of some degree of accountability in this. This is always a difficult subject, but it is one that I think we are making progress. It's also about encouraging institutions to go towards research, to increase the quality of the education they're imparting, to improve and increase the amount of, let me say, teaching that is being done. So these are all linked areas. I see the point about regulation. Regulators have a difficult time because people don't like being regulated, but I think standards of quality, minimum standards of adherence, this is what regulators can and should do. So these are areas which need to be worked on, need to be talked about, put in the public domain, and that's the direction in which I hope we're going. Gender equity is spoke of. Well, of the 46 central universities, 2 have women vice chancellors. Of the 19 IIMs and the 18 IITs, none have women directors. It's not by itself an indicator, but it tells you something. And I think we need to work more. We need to get the point across. I've been looking at the figures. This year, 9,900 odd students qualified for the IITs. We were able to provide, this is an unprecedented number, that many students coming into the IITs for BTech. The figure for women students, was 12%. When you look at the boards, it's a standard headline. Girls outperform boys. So where did they go? And don't tell me that they're not technologically inclined. They are definitely technologically. So we need to think about this. But we need to think about gender equity in very many ways. Not just in numbers of girls, but in the way that they are treated, dealt with. I think these are areas that the educational system has to introspect about. Student welfare. Entering these institutions through the kind of meat grinders that they come through in all of our institutions of higher learning is a difficult exercise. Spare a thought for the students. They need the counseling, they need the systems, and institutions must be on watch. They must look at them, students who come in, and irrespective of where they come from, what communication skills they carry, it is the obligation and duty of the institutions to ensure that they are taken through with dignity and with full access, and that they come out as responsible, bright citizens for the country. I could go on. You spoke of foreign educational institutions. I think at some point we should also discuss the enlarging of domestic philanthropy, as creating institutions and centers of excellence. That's also an option. And I think we need to look at both together. There's a lot, or there is much more that has been done in the last 10 years. There are new and exciting models of universities, of institutions that have emerged. I think we need to do more than that. At the end of the day, the higher education system is the recipient of the young men and women who have come through the school system. So as the higher education segment, we have a great interest in, and the school segment has a great responsibility to the higher education segment. Marks inflation, the pressures that have come, these are issues that we also need to talk about. You cannot have a vibrant higher education system if your students are taken through the kinds of pressures that they have presently in the school system. So I wanted to throw these open. I'm sorry, I did have a prepared text, but I didn't read it and I didn't look at it because I thought it's more important to respond to some of the issues there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your thoughts and letting all of us know the various interventions that the ministry is taking to take our higher education to the next level. So it is our endeavor through this conference to actually bring in the students into the policy dialogue, and that's one reason why we have a number of students from various universities who are sitting amongst us. Now we move on to the release of knowledge papers, and may I request our dignitaries to step forward. We do have about 4 knowledge papers that we have to release. To begin with, we will start with the FICCI EY knowledge paper on state-focused roadmap to India's Vision 2030. May I request Mr. Nikhil Rajpal, partner and education leader, Ernst & Young Private Limited, to come onto the stage. The report identifies and prioritizes key objectives for higher education system in states and provides a broad execution roadmap to achieve the objectives of access, equity, quality and excellence, all of which has been discussed and highlighted today in the inaugural session. The report also contains a few case studies from Asia and some of the progressive Indian states that have developed strategies and are proactively working towards developing a definitive higher education vision. May I now request Mr. Richard Everett, Director, British Council, India, to come to the dais for the release of FICCI British Council report titled The Asian Imperative Transforming Higher Education in South Asia. May I now, this is the last one but not the least, may I invite Mr. Michael, Director Quality Service EFMD, and Mr. Richard Jain, Senior Advisor EFMD, to join us on the dais and request the Honorable Dignitaries to release the next report, a compilation of articles by global thought leaders titled Making Brand Asia the International Toolkit. Thank you so much. Please give a big round of applause to her. Thank you so much for your patience. So all of you can get the copy of the knowledge reports from the registration desk. I'm also very happy to share with all of you that FICCI and World Bank had conducted an employer satisfaction survey in 2014 to understand the employer perception of skill levels of newly recruited engineering graduates. It was the follow-up survey of 2009, and the results showed a marked improvement where we found that almost 80% of employers were very satisfied or extremely satisfied, over 36% of employers in 2009. The survey was conducted for over nearly 900 firms who participated, and series of case studies and focus group discussions were carried out. There will be a presentation sharing the results by the World Bank tomorrow in the morning. So moving on, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor and privilege to invite Honorable Vice Chairman Niti Aayog, Dr. Arvind Panagaria, to kindly deliver the inaugural address. We are indeed privileged because we did have him last year as well in our conference. So may I request you to give your address.
Excellencies on the dais, delegates and distinguished guests. In my new role as I go to inaugural functions or be the chief guest, I'm realizing one thing, that the chief guest gets always set up. The hosts always get to speak first, and they have said everything that is there to be said, leaving very little for the chief guest to say. which of course worries me about the set of speakers who will come next for the rest of the day. Mohandas gave you a full kind of overview, and not just the overview, but also lots of details of the landscape, of the issues, of the facts, followed by Mr. Oberoi, who spoke eloquently about what the government has been doing. And so it leaves me a little bit unease as to what I want to say. Let me just take a little bit of historical perspective first. India started on higher education track sooner than almost all developing countries. We started building up, and we already started off actually in the year 100, almost 20 years prior to the independence. We had a set of universities started. At independence, what I think I recall correctly, in 25 or so universities already. And then the University Grants Commission got formed in the mid-1950s. And of course, with the vision of the leadership of the day, Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru being, of course, the first of those, but many others as well, we also started building up institutions of excellence. And this is where the IITs came along, IIMs came along, even the Indian Institute of Science as well. In fact, a lot of the criticism that one hears in recent times are along the lines that we sort of overemphasize higher education and we therefore ignored elementary education, and that was a big mistake. Personally, I don't really subscribe to that view because we did not actually ignore the elementary education. In fact, the Constitution very explicitly recognized, if you look at the principles of the directive principles of policy, the only directive principles of policy which actually had a deadline was the one relating to education, elementary education. That all children within 10 years would be in schools. So it was not it was not as though the policymakers were unaware of the importance of elementary education. It was simply a failure to carry out the mandate that they had set out for themselves. And many times they said that that the higher education somehow in terms of resources crowded out the elementary education, and that also I don't think is quite true. The very first 5-year plan, you could say that eventually this did actually leave us, but I don't think it was purely a matter of spending money. It had a lot more to do with the architecture of school education. After all, Korea, which by 1968 already had enrollment ratios of about, not enrollment ratios, but the literacy rates of about 85% or so, both for males and females, did do it with very limited resources also. They simply got the architecture right. They ran triple shifts. The school buildings were used not only for triple shifts every day, but also much during night to educate the population, including the adult population. And other countries which did it early on also did it with very limited resources. In Korea and Taiwanese per capita incomes were more higher than India's in the 1950s and early 1960s. In fact, what we did in higher education paid off quite a bit. I've always argued that in the end, if the IT revolution, the software industry success happened, it was because actually India had built up these institutions of higher education. And also subsequently, of course, I'll talk about that, what we did with engineering. So I think historically, we started off, in my opinion, quite right. Higher education is also an essential ingredient, and we simply cannot say that I'll first do school education and then I'll do higher education. They have to go hand in hand. I mean, those in the end that you educate, and if you educate them well in schools, would want education in college as well. So I think the pursuit of higher education alongside school education was perhaps the right way to do it. It's simply that on school education we could not make as faster progress as was intended due to faulty architecture or policies. So in any case, I think as we come along historically, somewhere we tend to lose out on higher education, maybe around 80s, 90s or what have you. A good comparison here is with China, which had more or less during the Cultural Revolution in the 60s had decimated its higher education completely. The Cultural Revolution was about anti-intellectualism, and of course universities were home to the intellectuals, and that of course therefore the Cultural Revolution more or less decimated, went on to decimate the higher education system in its entirety. So in the 1980s, China started off again, building up its higher education system, started off with scratch. It just was a new beginning. And yet, I think once China got onto this, partly of course it was imposed by its very high growth rates of almost 10% for 1990s and 2000s, and then also 1980s prior to that. But the effort perhaps was much more concerted as well than ours, and China eventually by 2000s surpassed India in the growth enrollment ratios. India's growth enrollment ratios remain starkly low. I remember for a long time I kept seeing this number of 6%. And then I think it's sort of graduated to 8 and to 10. Then of course in recent times we have made huge progress. There's been a huge jump. And today we have we've crossed the 20% growth enrollment ratio. We may now it does look like we may be able to catch up with the Chinese growth enrollment and with the rest of the humanities, so to say. Quality of education has been a bigger challenge. Maybe I want to come back also to when I talk about what we need to do for the future. But let me at least put this on the table that the quality of education has been certainly a bigger challenge in India. Some of the institutions obviously have done incredibly well, and those institutions have produced graduates who have then gone on for higher education to the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, etc., and they've done incredibly well. Even in the United States, it's hard to find any faculty, whether it be humanities or science or engineering, in any top university that doesn't have a faculty member today. Indian engineers also went on to ultimately be a major part of the software revolution that took place in Silicon Valley. So certainly at the very top level we have successfully produced very high quality scholars, engineers, other professionals. But nevertheless, overall, still in the global context, the quality has been a challenge, even for our best institutions. So if you look at the QS rankings, until last year, we did not have a single institution that was in the QS World rankings. In 2015, we finally had a break. IISc was ranked 147th, and IIT Delhi got ranked 179th. And even IIT Bombay also improved its ranking, though it was 202, so it was not in the top 200. But some break has happened there, which is a hugely welcome change. But still, I think overall, the quality of education in India, when you look at the average, it leaves much to be desired. Again, I'll come to that issue in a minute when I want to talk about policies. One of the things that we did, at least to me seems retrospectively a really very serious mistake, was the delinking of teaching and research. And this is something I realized only after I came to the United States for my own PhD, and subsequently became a professor myself. That what we did was to leave the teaching in the universities and colleges, and then research we said we'll do separately in the councils, and then we created a large number of research councils. I think on the whole that has not worked out very well. One very important reason being, which I personally really understood only after being a part of the research community in the United States, that for advancement of research, interaction that happens between professors and students is absolutely central. Professors are older guys, students are younger people. They question everything. And it is through the questioning by the students that the professors actually learn all the new questions that they have not thought about, and that in turn actually makes them go back, do further research. Also, the collaboration of the research between the students and the faculty members is very important. That is again an aspect that was really absent, certainly when I studied at Rajasthan University myself. That aspect was really missing because none of the professors was really doing any significant research at the time. Also from the viewpoint of the teaching, actually, those doing research on the frontiers, being at the university is incredibly important because that's how you are going to actually teach your students what is happening on the frontiers of research. So frontiers of research will otherwise be unknown. We could have our teachers who are using notes that are 20 years old or 30 years old, continuing to teach the same course. Even the curriculum upgrading may not happen if the professors actually are not keeping up with the changes that are happening. And if the same professors then also go and serve on the higher educational bodies that actually form the curriculum, such as the University Grants Commission or whatever bodies are empowered to do that, then they would not themselves know what the state of the particular field is, and therefore the old thinking will perpetuate the new ideas will fail to enter. So I think this delinking was part of research and teaching, I think was a major mistake. It had another actually fallout effect, which today we feel much more centrally, and that has to do with the link between industry and education institutions. Why would industry come to a university? There are two reasons it might come to a university, because there are certain problems it needs solutions to, and it doesn't have the intellectual power within the industry to find the solution to that problem, and the university might have it. Now, the university would have it if it had a research faculty in-house. If the universities really are not doing research, then that need all the industry cannot be fulfilled by the university, and so the industry is unlikely to have the incentive to actually come to the university. So that link also, again, because the research was left outside of the universities, was severe in India. The other link, of course, can be that the university wants to send some of its young employees or even older ones to seek training at the universities. MBA programs, very executive MBA programs are common examples of that, but for the other engineering applied fields as well. That function perhaps is somewhat, but still, it still remains not equally fulfilled also because of this delinking of research and teaching at the universities in India. So I think long-term challenges in the Indian education system are clearly there, very substantial ones, and the country clearly in history is waiting to be transformed. Just as we need transformation in all different variety of areas as well, things like urbanization, things like industrialization, growth of manufacturing. There are lots of transformation waiting to happen. And the same is true of higher education in India. First, of course, as I talked about this, that we need rapid expansion. Although growth and enrollment ratios have actually got dramatic numbers that he was telling us, and the reports. By the way, do look at the reports. I had the chance to, since the inaugural only requires a hard copy to be opened. I was privy to the electronic copies of the reports, and they are excellent reports, superb. So I do recommend for you to read, but lots of data also. So again, there. The reports document how the enrollment ratios in the south have been dramatically risen. I think Tamil Nadu reported like 46%, which is the highest 42. So that's a dramatic, growth enrollment ratio that really, comes close to what we would observe in most of the developed countries as well. But on average, still our growth enrollment ratios are lower. So we need expansion. Expansion has to happen in both private sector and public sector, and that has a certain implication for policy as well. There is some view that comes around here that somehow we are expanding at super rate IITs and IIMs, and that's diluting the brand name of these institutions, etc. Personally, I don't subscribe to that view for two reasons. One, students are very damn smart. They know which IITs are which. They can figure out and you can easily go back to the rankings that most students give when they ask to be placed at the IITs. They know it. So the dilution of the brand name is to me not a particularly persuasive argument. And of course also then on the other hand, I feel that IITs, IIMs have the most autonomous kind of structure, and if we expand actually along the lines of IITs and IIMs, the autonomy that we all seek for our institution of higher education, it will expand. The field of autonomy will expand if we expand along the dimension of IITs and IIMs. So I certainly fully endorse that policy of the government. On private expansion, I think we have been slow. 15 years ago, I used to write and complain literally how there was hardly any private university, perhaps saving the safe. I don't know how this one, Mr. Pai managed to slip through it under the old regime, the Manipal University, but largely started what is college. But anyway, but otherwise, so that used to be my example, actually, the only private university that I knew of. Colleges we allowed from the beginning, and that was actually a good thing because college education, the output spread much faster. The universities I used to complain, but today, of course, there is proliferation. There is a very large number of universities now which are private. Still not, still less than half, but it's very rapidly going towards that share. Again, there are complaints about quality and quantity, and I must say that I was not persuaded by that argument personally. A good example, actually, I would give you is that my favorite example is that of the engineering colleges and medical colleges. These have operated on two very different models. Medical college, restricted entry, Medical Council of India, hugely restricted entry. So if you see, like my own home state, Rajasthan, 1965 we had 5 medical colleges, in 1995 we still had 5 medical colleges. That is how restricted the Medical Council of India has been. The alternative model has been AICTE, which is which let the engineering colleges proliferate. And my own view is that actually if engineering colleges had not really expanded at the rate that they expanded, and also IIMs, which also had relatively free entry, they also had not expanded the kind of growth that we were able to actually get in the 2000s, from 2003, 4 to 11, 12, 8.3% on average for 9 years, would not have happened. It would have been startled by the shortage of engineers and managers. But that did not happen because the expansion happened quite rapidly in these areas. Sometimes we get worried that the quality at the low end of the private institutions is low. But at the end of the day, they got to face the market test, and if they do poorly, they have to close down. And a lot of that closing down is underway in engineering colleges, even in management institutions. So I think we have to see this holistically. On average, I think the contribution of the private institutions has been very substantial. A lot of our students would have been totally without higher education. And even when we say that a particular management institution actually gives us poor education, we got to also compare what is my counterfactual. Is the counterfactual that education versus the best he could get, or that education versus no education that he would have been able to get had that institution not been there. There ought to be our measure of yardstick against which we measure the need for or necessity of these institutions. So again, I think I sort of on balance come out for easier entry. Interns also need to do something about the salaries that the universities are able to pay their professors. Often, the best people actually opt out to the private sector. Best students either opt out to the private sector or they go on abroad to do PhDs and obtain another higher education. I think we need to address that issue. And one of the ways, the problems the country is facing very seriously is the availability of the teachers. And doing something about the salaries is perhaps one of the ways to tackle that. It's not the only way, of course, one has to work with multiple instruments, as I always advocated, should do that. Let me just say that finally come to my own home territory, which is the states. That is the subject of this year's conference of FICCI, and that I'm very pleased that FICCI has taken that area very head on. States is where most of the students are. That is where action ought to be, and that is where one could actually add the largest value. It is also, I think, on average, state universities are the ones that are lagging behind, and so the scope actually for improvement in state universities is that much more. At NITI Aayog, we have been since inception very much advocating what the Prime Minister and really is the leadership under the leadership of the Prime Minister, who is himself focused on cooperative competitive federalism. And this is where I think in higher education clearly cooperative competitive federalism could work very, very well. We ought to, and this is where maybe FICCI can help NITI Aayog, that gather what are the best practices in this case. After all, India is a large country, we've got a large number of universities, private as well as public, and even within whatever quality education we have, within that there is a huge amount of variation and there are lessons to be had. And these lessons, we have derived from our own universities. Contextually, they apply more easily, they can be followed more easily. Oftentimes, when you bring lessons from another country or another culture, those are harder to transplant. Because also we suffer from this skepticism. I remember when we used to advocate both policies and said, look what Korea has done or what Taiwan has done. We sort of say that, look, that's a different kind of people, we are different people. But when the same kind of work begins to happen in Tamil Nadu or in Gujarat, then we are much more willing to say that Gujarat can do it, Tamil Nadu can do it. Why can't Rajasthan or Bihar do it? And that's the sort of lessons from your own culture, from your own context are much more easily absorbed and implemented. And so if we can really therefore get good what are the best practices in our universities in various parts of the world, and they could come some from University A and others from University B. Not even a single university is going to be the best at everything. I think we would very much be there to propagate and engage with the officials and the witnesses in the states to actually spread the word. So here I see a scope for cooperation between the Aayog and FICCI. So with that invitation, let me conclude. Thanks very much for inviting me. It has been a great pleasure.
Thank you, sir, for that visionary speech, and we are really very encouraged by your presence at this conference. And you did lay out the whole the roadmap of on which the discussion of this conference can take shape, and we look forward to our cooperation between FICCI and NITI Aayog. You did mention about the lack of industry-academia engagement. In this context, I want to share with you an initiative that FICCI and UK's Royal Academy of Engineering has initiated under the Newton Bhabha Innovation Fund which builds science, innovation and R&D ties between India and UK. And this fund is sponsored by both the governments. As part of the fund, the Academy and FICCI are implementing a program called Higher Education Partnership to build linkages between industry and academia through sponsoring high-level exchanges between countries through a hub-and-spoke model. FICCI has an industry-academia engagement mechanism called the National Knowledge Functional Hub, which creates mechanism for employability and entrepreneurship amongst graduates. The Royal Academy of Engineering has led higher education partnership in UK and Africa in similar lines to the NKFH model, and which has led to curricular change in several leading universities and valuable knowledge transfer into industry. A couple of months back, we had asked to submit universities and higher education institutions to submit expression of interest, which was advertised for both public and private institutions. We received about 50 applications from both public and private universities. An expert group from UK and India have shortlisted about 20 institutions, which was based on the evaluation metrics such as sustainability and quality of project, and these institutions will then later be asked to submit a detailed proposal, and the final evaluation will then select 3 to 4 institutions or universities, which will be provided a total amount of 75,000 GBP annually for 2 years, and the awardee institution is also they need to match up this amount either through kind and cash, and FICCI will definitely facilitate these institutions to raise that funding. The names of the shortlisted institutions will be announced tomorrow at 11:25 a.m. So don't miss the session. Now we move on to the last but not the least level, which is the concluding remarks, and may I request Dr. Rajan Saxena, co-chair of FICCI Higher Education Committee, to give the concluding remarks.
Our guest this morning, Dr. Arvind Panagraj, Vice Chair, Niti Aayog, Secretary, Ministry of HRD, Mr. Vinayshil Oberoi, President FICCI, Mr. Josna Suri, President Chair, Higher Education Committee, Mr. Mohandas Pai, Co-Chair, Dr. Indra Parekh, Shobha, the Senior Director of FICCI and who looks after the Higher Education Initiative in FICCI, invited guests, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure that you will all agree with me that this morning, after listening to 3 very powerful presentations, one from a visionary, another from the thought leader, and the third from the policymaker and the implementers of a whole lot of policy initiatives, we certainly are enriched. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a very big thanks to our 3 very distinguished speakers, Mr. Arvind Panagraj, Mr. Oberoi, and Mr. Mohandas Pai. Ladies and gentlemen, we all started this morning with the President's clarion call for talking about looking at why there is a need for education in Asia itself, and what is really required for the purpose of transforming Asia. And therefore, in terms of looking at it, the very rationale, the very, let's say, the forces that are driving change today in Asia requires us to look at the issues of mobility across Asian countries, and certainly to look at how we really expand the education sector and leverage technology, which is certainly available to us. Mr. Mohandas Pai, in his very I would say, an inimitable style, and certainly, as in his usual way, provided that kind of a innovation or a vision for what is it that is really required in this country. He was talking about it from the perspective of looking at the new workplace, the changes that are taking place, the need for developing knowledge, and at the same point in time, looking at it from the perspective of innovation. And for that purposes, he brought out the importance of the autonomy of the institutions, and certainly brought back the importance of states if we really want the change to happen. And that's where our entire focus of this theme is really this area. We all know that the action really lies in the states where a lot needs to be done. And we certainly heard right now the Secretary telling us about a whole lot of initiatives that the Government of India had already taken. And in terms of looking at what is really required for the purposes of having the gender balance and the respect for the gender, and at the same time looking at issues of student welfare and development. Dr. Panagraj, as he was speaking, sir, I was very much reminded of what typically all of us in the academic institutions keep talking about it. From the perspective of the quality of higher education, from the perspective of graduate education particularly, what is really required, how do we really create a learning environment, what is really required for the purposes of creating a research culture within the universities, how do we really create collaborative research, and certainly the significance of the faculty updation, which cannot be undermined as the universities really grow. And certainly the fact that it doesn't pay us to teaching with research. On the context of private sector, I think a very important kind of an advice that we got was, and the fact that we are all seeing today, is that the market forces play a very significant role in terms of leveling out the entire, or determining who is going to succeed, and really telling us in terms of the quality and also in terms of the kind of institution that will be there for tomorrow itself. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, ultimately, as we really go back into the states and we go into the policy framework, I think the challenge is not in terms of the thought process that is required. It is also not in terms of, let us say, the policy initiatives that are required. Because there has been so much of thinking that has been going on in the last 1 decade, or more than that. And there have been some wonderful ideas that have come up. Dr. Panagraj, in his usual columns that he'd been writing in the Times of India earlier, he'd been talking about a whole lot of some of those ideas. But really speaking, the challenge lies in implementation. And I think the challenge in terms of the implementation are in 3 areas. One, what is it really required in terms of expanding our education sector? What is it that is really needed? Whether it is the private sector or it is the central government, or the state government, in terms of whether it is the policy initiatives, it is in terms of the investment that is required, or it is in terms of the technology. But I think at the end of the day, a country like India needs to grow at a much faster pace. And given the our demographic compulsion, we have no other alternative. So expansion, excellence is an important aspect. We need to really continue to focus on excellence, because if we don't excel in the global context, we will really be nowhere. And that's what Dr. Panagraj was talking about it from the perspective of the quality. In terms of the global context, is a question that we need to be asking ourselves, and certainly making the policy, or let's say the entire action, far more equitable itself, including everybody. So the challenge in terms of looking at it from this kind of perspective lies in terms of creating a kind of a dialogue between almost all the stakeholders who are there in it. The academics on the one hand, the policymaker on the other, the industry on another person, and the last is certainly the society itself. If we are able to do that kind of a conversation or a dialogue, if we are able to establish that kind of dialogue, we'll certainly be able to move the entire, let's say, or we'll be able to create a much bigger momentum. Autonomy of institutions cannot be undermined. it is today extremely required that when we talk about autonomy, it is not just academic, but the administrative, and even the fact that the institutions can generate ideas. The autonomy to generate ideas, the autonomy to implement those ideas, I think is extremely important from an institutional perspective. And for that purposes, the states will have to look at it from the perspective of open doors policy, getting everybody in, whoever has an idea, bringing them in. And certainly looking at it from the perspective of how do you fund research, because if you don't really look at research, we will not be able to really create a significant kind of a knowledge society, and we'll never be able to really hit the global mark itself. So ladies and gentlemen, these are some of our challenges, and certainly I'm hopeful, and we all look at it in FICCI in terms of these 2 days, spending and deliberating on some of these issues in various kind of technical sessions where we have lined up very distinguished speakers from within the country, from the states, and also from outside itself. I'm sure that you are going to enjoy these 2 days as you have been doing it in the earlier past. Before I conclude, my thanks are to E&Y, the British Council, and also the EFMD, who have really come together with us for the purposes of releasing the knowledge papers. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and to the entire panel who have really made this morning such an interesting and a learning kind of session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saxena, for very ably concluding the discussions during the inaugural sessions. Just before we formally close, I have a couple of announcements to make. We do have a poster presentation competition on the theme From Thinking to Making. The evaluation process would take place today, and the posters are at display on the 3rd floor lobby of Federation House next door. The top 3 posters will be given certificates tomorrow. We also have several interesting sessions lined up, but one in particular I would like to bring into focus, because we did talk about the intelligent technologies, disrupting the way we have been operating so far. So we have a session that is going to be focused on that particular subject, that how the new how new technologies are disrupting the way we learn and teach. The session is titled The New Learning Models Through Disruptive Technologies, which is going to be the last session tomorrow. Do please come and attend that session and bring in whoever you think would be interested in this session, because we want to make this session particularly accessible to everybody. And the last but not the least, this is the 2nd year when we are having our FICCI Higher Education Awards. That's going to be, the award ceremony is going to be at 7:30 today in this very venue. Do join us and for the awards and dinner thereafter. With this, we come to the conclusion of the inaugural session. Please give a big round of applause to all our dignitaries. We reassemble here at 11:50 for the next session, which is on Higher Education Vision of Asia, few successful case studies. Thank you so much. Tea is served outside. Do go and enjoy a cup of tea and coffee.
And they know that. Okay. Folks, you heard the speeches in the inaugural session. As we said, 2 years ago, we came out with a vision report. A copy of that will be available to you from the Secretariat. We spoke about an India which in 2030 will have 70 million young people in colleges, the largest higher education system in the world. It will have a gross enrollment rate of 50%, and it will have 20 institutions in the top 200 in the world in terms of quality. This is the vision. We made a gap analysis. We are happy to say that we have moved forward. As far as the students in college is concerned, we have 32 million right now this year, and the gross enrollment rate has gone to something like 23%, and is growing at about 6 to 7% a year. So we will reach 50 million, other things being equal. Two, in terms of quality, we have 2 institutions in the top 200. Many more are coming. A major reason why institutions are not in the global ranking is they've not been giving information to these rating agencies. They've not been giving information. ISA did not give enough information for many years. Last year they gave information. They came out right at top at 147. And once full information comes about research, I'm sure many more will come. But there's a move by many others to improve research. The President of India has been holding conclaves every year, talking to vice chancellors of central universities and urging them to improve research. I think that's important. And there are many private universities spending increasingly higher amounts of research. So we are confident that is going to happen. The next issue has been about social equity, and that we find is a challenge because it's very disparate between various states. So we said this year we must come out with a report on states. So we have this publication with original research by E&Y, Ernst & Young, Nikhil is here, which speaks about the state's agenda and the roadmap for the state's vision 2030. And when we look at the state data, we are very surprised to see the diversity in the data. Like you said, Tamil Nadu is 42% GER, and that's extremely well. The whole of South India is closer to 30% on an average. That is Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, etc. And that region is the most advanced in India, most developed, with the highest quality of jobs, and the lowest population growth rate. Population growth rate is now 1.8. The fertility rate is 1.8. Is below the replacement rate of 2.1. So South India is clearly showing up that the investment in higher education, largely private, is actually paying off. The eastern part of India is a matter of concern. They have the lowest GER of around 16-18%, and that's a challenge, and I think more investment has to come in. In the northern part of India, Delhi of course stands out as the metropolis, and Rajasthan is doing pretty well. Gujarat is about 18-19% in terms of GER, but the north has to catch up and they come number 2. And then the western part of India is catching up. There's nothing left after Maharashtra has taken us south. I don't think much of the west is left. But whatever it is just behind the south. So if you take the west and the south and look at the rest of India, especially UP and Bihar, we have deep challenges. And the diversity between southern India, western India, UP, Bihar and eastern India is expanding. So if you have to fill the gap, and the gap is enormous, obviously it's going to be a very, very deep challenge. So we came out with this report, then we came out with the Ernst & Young FICCI Index. And the index is here in this book. And if you look at the index has five buckets, 5 different verticals: access, equity, relevance and quality, governance and excellence. And if you look at all the scores, you find that the scores are very varied, but once again you can group them under 4 or 5 buckets, and there you find the same kind of evidence. So we have created this kind of a report to give the states an ability to compare themselves in keeping with the new spirit of competitive federalism. We also hope that we'll prepare a state report for transformation. We prepared a state report for transformation for Karnataka and for West Bengal. We picked up one state in the south, Karnataka, and we're showing West Bengal because West Bengal in the east is very, very significant for India. And we're shown what they need to do in the next 300 days as an action plan, what they need to do in the next 5 years, and what they need to do beyond that to bring those states up to a national average. Because we will not realize our aspirations in the country unless the eastern part of India, the central part of India, where the majority of population reside, come up to certain standards, and their matters of deep concern. While we want our more advanced states to grow faster and to do much better, we want other states which are coming behind to accelerate and improve their higher education infrastructure. For example, West Bengal has got a GR of 15%. I stand corrected, it's 15%, and Calcutta has got 50%. So very clearly, there's nothing wrong in that part of the world except lack of investment, lack of focus, and I think that has to come. So I think the report stands out very well, and we have a 300-day action plan which calls for deepening impact, to invest in quality, to restructure, or to sustain leadership. So I would urge all of you to read this report, to read the case study on Tamil Nadu, what Tamil Nadu did. Like Dr. Panagriya said, we need to have best practices from every state so that other states could catch up. And for most states in central India, especially UP and Bihar, Tamil Nadu will be a very good case study because Tamil Nadu's experiment in social engineering is paying off. It's done extremely well. Social equity is extraordinary in Tamil Nadu. More suction society have come up, And if you look at the backward caste and if you classes and you look at the reserved category, both and as the rest, the difference between them is very little. The difference is narrowed down and is very little. And that demonstrates that if you give access to education equally in terms of social equity, everybody will do well. Everybody will do well. Because people don't have access, or people live in rural areas, are they poor, they denied access, and that means that they're not able to come up to expected levels. Once access is given and quality is assured, and access also implies that you have quality institutions, everybody does well, and Tamil Nadu is certainly an outstanding example. And Tamil Nadu's governance at the state level is very good. They have a state higher education commission which works on policy. The state invests in higher education and they use technology to accelerate development. So all the things that we speak about have been done as Tamil Nadu as a case study. We also given a case study of Singapore. Obviously 30 years back Singapore was a similar place, but Singapore is a city-state. It's a very small population, just about 5 million, 50 million people. 5 million people. 5 million is half of Bangalore. So, we should not compare ourselves with Singapore. Let's compare ourselves with China. China has done extraordinarily well because their investment is possibly 3 to 4 times what India spends, and they're focused on getting quality. China produces the second largest number of PhDs in the world, the second largest number of research papers in the world. They have a gross enrollment rate of 35%, and as a nation, they've expressed they want to dominate higher education globally. So with this, I would like to rest and ask if you have any questions. Anyone, if you want to make any comments? I think we'll ask Nikhil to, as the author of this report, and I want to compliment him because, folks, it's an extraordinary piece of research. It's been a long time. I don't recall any research piece on higher education with such kind of a deep analysis using data like Nikhil has done. Nikhil is an extraordinary effort, please.
Thank you for that, Mr. Pai. I think just won't take too much time, just wanted to add a few comments so as people read the report, read with the right context. I think, as Mr. Pai said, higher education in India has to go through a big transformation overall. We have high aspirations of what the country needs to do, and the higher education system has to be the engine behind it, right? So, and also equally obvious to all of us that states have to drive the transformation given how much control is there and the opportunity there is to improve. But what we also found is that, the states, as Mr. Pai sort of mentioned, are in very different state starting points. Right? Overall, the transformation needs to happen in every state in a big way if you take a 15-year viewpoint. But from a next 5-year perspective, states may have very different priorities depending on where they are. If you have a state like Tamil Nadu, which already solved to some extent the access to education problem, their challenges will be more around sustaining that and investing more in leadership, building world-class institutions. Tamil Nadu, Delhi will be like that. The other states, some of the smaller hill states, who also have solved the access problem. They have enough capacity, but don't have enough research and quality, and they will have to focus more on quality in the short term. The other states where the both problems of access and quality. So what we did in the report was create the FICCI EY index with the help of the committee and the stakeholders and a lot of data research to at least categorize states into 4 different buckets. So, and then really think about, while the common core remains of transformation for all of them, in the near term, next 5 years, where should more of the effort go for different states? I think that's the spirit of what we've done here. Obviously, each state has a lot of state-specific issues they have to solve for. But at least this can be a starting point to understand where they are today, what are the bigger concerns, and at least lays out some initial steps to drive on, which they can build on. I think that's just the context I wanted to provide. This is not the answer, but a first step and a big step towards that answer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and we'll be working with the state this year to hold events in each state to drop their own vision report, help them give a conclusion, so that the states, because we firmly believe now after 2 years of policy work that the action has to be in the states. There's no point looking at India as a single entity where action will come, because execution is important. Like Dr. Rajan said in his closing remarks, we know the problems, we know the solutions, we know it for a long time. We got to make it work at the grassroots level, and the only way it will work is for the states to do the work. It cannot be done from Delhi. So that's why the state focus is extremely important. Questions, please? Yes, sir.
And every time we make recommendations to the government and any sort of thing. Okay. It's not working. Yeah. It's okay. So what I'm saying that you have been holding this conference annually for so many years now. And every time you make a lot of recommendations, very good recommendations. And are there any outcomes? Have you taken up a stock of what happened last year? For example, you came up with the vision last year. The policy making is happening this year. So was any effort made by FICCI or your higher education committee to put some of those items in their policy framework?
I think some of it is come. There is greater understanding, but we shared your disappointment and frustration at the lack of accelerated policy. Policy is behind our need, and we have come to realize that universities have to work themselves, because many of the things universities can do, and by socializing ideas, putting up a report before them, the universities are improving, they're competing. We see in the last 2-3 years many private universities competing, state universities competing, the government universities like ISC coming up into the ranking. We work behind the scenes, and very clearly the future lies in the states. The states can do a lot, and I think the idea that one single person sitting in Delhi can wave a magic wand, things improve, is an outdated idea.
Mr. Pai and
Sir.
Mr. Saxena, you
Sir.
talked about autonomy of everything. So you get autonomy of everything and you want to do whatever you feel like. But what happens to down below, 50% of them institutions which are just selling for all practical purpose business. They are running a business of selling those degrees and doing nothing. One of the institution, I can name that because I have the documents, Jagannath Institute, was caught in Delhi selling degrees which were of the year when even they didn't existed. So giving autonomy to these kind of people, why you should be given an autonomy?
Okay,
why
let me answer. Yes, sir.
You are a handful of them on the top who, okay, maybe do something good. Maybe what about the rest of it? Now,
Okay.
why shouldn't you be given an autonomy?
Okay.
Who controls these people who are selling?
I'll answer your
Point
question.
number 2. Mr. Nikhil, there are a lot of engineering colleges, who are closing down, who have filed, go ahead. So there is SS. About, okay, you gave SS to everybody. There is an SS. Nobody is going there. Why it is nobody is going there? Why can't you file do a study on why these engineering colleges, so many of them are closing down, and what are the remedies and how they can be brought up? Maybe they will buy this report from you, some consultancy services, and do something better.
Okay. Society has good, bad, and the ugly. You accept that? The good people, bad people, ugly people, right? Now we want autonomy for the good institutions. Who are the good institutions? The institutions accredited by an accreditation body. That's what we recommended. It's not free for all. You and I just can't start as we want and do what we want. There's an accreditation mechanism. Those who get the highest grades for accreditation should be given full autonomy. Those who don't have acceptable grades require some control. And those who don't have any grades at all should be shut down. So that's the structure. Accountability, autonomy should move along with accountability. That's the logic that we're given. The IITs don't require any control. The IIMs don't require any control. The top 20% of India don't require any control. They're very good. The record is there, the output is there, and the evidence is very, very clear. For them, we give them full autonomy. The next 20%, little bit of control till they come up with a standard, and the rest have to work their way up like is anybody else. And the second question about this bad colleges, because you open up the system, every year bad colleges are dying. That's the only way it works. There are bad colleges, there will be bad people, they have to be shut down. And they will be shut down if students don't go to them. Now we must differentiate fraud from autonomy. Fraud is wrong, they must be shut down. Government should go out of them, it's criminal. Fraud is criminal. We cannot compare fraudulent institution with good institution and tar and feather the whole lot. It cannot be done. There are 800 universities. 200 of them are pretty good, very good. They should get full autonomy. That's our feeling. Not the, this Jagannath or whatever it is, nobody is exposing their case. They should be shut down. It's very clear.
But sir, basically Jagannath is also having 2 universities in 2 different states.
Well, I don't know. Then they should get a good accreditation. So I don't want to talk about individuals. It's up to the regulators to look at them. If you get a good accreditation, you should do it. You want to say something?
No, I think at the end of the day, it's a market that is really going to be determining what's really going to be good and what's going to be bad. I think too much of a control, this has led towards a total kind of a failure in the education system. It's a total lose-lose strategy. If we have to grow, we have to open up the market, let institutions come in. Maybe after some point of time, they will close down. If they can't survive, if they can't meet up the market test, they're going to lose out. And today the student is the bigger kind of a regulator. And let me tell you, the student today knows which institution to go and which institution not to go. And that, I think, is a very important part which is there.
Last question?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
This is for everybody. It's basically, I'm told 59% of the higher education is in the hand of private sector today in India. Most of them are engineering colleges.
No, they're not. They're not. Please, 48,000 colleges.
Yeah.
65% of them are private sector.
Private sector. So my question is, basically what happens is there is a stepmotherly attitude being shown towards the private sector in terms of regulation. For example, the recent regulation which says any MOU you enter with a foreign university for joint degrees, it has to pass through the MHRD.
No, I spoke to Secretary just now, and he said that there will be a new circular issued for that, which says that so long as there is no impact on government funding, they're free to sign it. He just told me it's been issued.
That's a positive development.
I raised it. That's a very
Another one thing, for example, take this new initiative, Global Initiative for Academic Networks, GYAN. This is what the Prime Minister recently has been doing, been inviting about a few eminent professors from foreign universities to the country. Some 25 universities have been identified. Most of these universities are again from those public sector thing. They are not from the private sector.
Okay.
So even the private sector doesn't mind funding. Fund is the issue, but you call them, you send them to USM. When they come to India, they should also visit the private universities.
Okay.
They will fund their stay there.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else in the media? Media only, please.
What has FICCI done for the development of... Yeah.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
What has FICCI done for the development of system of teachers? Because there's acute
Sir, we
shortage
can't
of-
solve the world's problem. We are an advisory.
But when you are in private sector also... And
private sector is doing a lot, but we can't solve the world. I'll talk to you outside this seminar. Okay, we want to talk about the report. Anybody else? Okay, folks, thank you very much. Now I think the people are coming for the session. We look forward to your cooperation and dialogue with you. Thank you.
Thank you.